Assalamu alaikum, everybody. So since today is going to be our last session, I thought I'd go over um, a couple tips about learning Tajweed. So what we've done so far this month has been to go over a bunch of rules, which I don't expect everybody to remember. And we've gone over them in their simplest forms. For example, we went over three different types of mad or elongation of the vowels. And whereas there can often be, depending on who you learn it from, between 11 to 14 of them. Because there are many different cases where sometimes things might change. And sometimes you just go over those for the sake of knowing the different cases, even though the application might not be any different than another rule, for example. So, so I just want to go over a few tips on improving your recitation. Not so much just Tajweed, but just learning to recite better in general. And the first of those is to actually learn the rules. Um, we went over a bunch of them, a lot of the crucial ones this month. There are more, as I mentioned, and a lot of them can be learned online or from different Tajweed books. There's a very good source for actually learning these rules. It's a PDF that a sister put together when she was learning them herself. So they're the notes from her class. They're very detailed. If you Google reach the goal via Tajweed rules, you'll be able to find that PDF. It's a great resource, completely free. Um, and you can learn uh, almost all the rules you'll need just from that. Um, I've also mentioned a few tips and tricks depending on the script of the Quran that you're reading from, because there's different, calligraphic styles, and then certain stops, for example, are going to be shown in different ways. Now, those are very good to know, especially if you're mostly going to be reading from one style of text, which most of us do. But it's also good to learn the rules so that you don't have to depend on them too much. For example, I came across this picture on Facebook recently. Somebody who learned how to recite in Africa learned following a similar script. And this isn't like some kind of ancient old version of the Quran, because if you look at the ayah numbers, you'll see that they're actually in English. So you can see here that different cultures often might write things differently. For example, in the first ayah, you'll see that all the way at the top, you'll see that qul is written in a way that, for example, we might read it as full, right? But that's actually the qaf. The dot kind of comes underneath it. Um, this is a little bit this is very different than what you might come across in general, though. I don't mean to confuse you. I just wanted to show you how very differently certain things can be shown. You'll even see in some of the alifs, for example, there's a cross through it instead of a sukun on top. That just means you skip the alif. Um, so the and for the fas, by the way, those are written differently, where you'll see the dot underneath it. So the qaf has a dot on top, fa has it on underneath. Um, and this is because when the Quran was first recorded, it was recorded without dots or without vowels, and different styles developed over time. Um, for the most part, everybody uses the regular one that we recite from, but you will see other stuff out there. Now, the more common texts that you will see, that you will see throughout your life, are going to be these three, probably, where you have this one in the middle, which is the Osmanta script, which is the one that I believe most of us have been reciting from, where the Quran starts on a new ayah, ends on a new ayah, and it has this very common script that we're used to seeing. You'll see the meds on top, you'll see all the same stops on them. But for example, this one on the right, so that's the one in the middle. The one on the right, though, is this South Asian kind of script, where yes, yeah, so you'll see it more often in Pakistan or India, this kind of script. And so the mads are still there, but then you'll also see, for example, some of the stops might be shown differently. So like after la raib, if you compare this one to the one in the middle, you'll see that there's both the three dots and then there's a sadi there and a jim there. Um, I personally don't know why those are written differently. The stops are different. That's somebody else can. If someone else knows, that would be great. But it's different and it can get confusing. And if you also look down, for example, um, let's see, hold on. In the last ayah, for example, it says "wama unzila." So you'll see that there's a wow over the alif in unzila, but there's no hamza there. Whereas that's the hamza um, is going to be there in the other in the Osmanta version of the Quran, right? So you're going to see a lot of hamzas on top of alifs or under them or something are going to be omitted in this Indo-Pak version. And then there is the modern Arabic type, which confuses a lot of people, especially regarding recitation. So this is the one on all the way on the left. I took this screenshot from tanzil.org. So as you can see, this is basically how Arabic is typed on a computer. And you'll see that, for example, the med symbols aren't here anymore. So you see on Alif Lam Mim, there should be two of them, but they completely didn't put that there because that's typically not how Arabic is typed. But then in ayah, towards the end of ayah 4, you see here in bil akhirah, you do see a med symbol, but that doesn't actually mean it's a med. It means that there is a hamza with an alif, hamza with fatha, and then an alif afterwards. Um, so that's typically how modern Arabic is written because it's not written for recitation, whereas these different scripts might have these meta symbols there to tell us that these are supposed to be elongated vowels because they're written specifically for recitation. So if you don't actually know the rules of mad and you go by those mad symbols and you read from, for example, a modern Arabic type version of the Quran or even to us, most of them are written with this modern Arabic type. You might make a mistake in that case. So that's why it's very important for us to actually know many of the rules so that when we are shown these different types of scripts, we're able to recite properly regardless. And there are a few different types of rules when it comes to recitation. So one is Tajweed. We generally called all of this Tajweed throughout the month, but there are technically differences. So Tajweed is, for example, the stuff that makes the recitation more beautiful. So the rules of the Noon, the Ghunna, the Mudud, those all fall under Tajweed. And then there is the Makharaj al-Huruf, so the pronunciation of each of the letters. Um, and then there's Sifat al-Huruf, so the characteristics of the letters. Qalqala, for example, it's technically not a tajweed rule, but is a characteristic of these letters. Some you'll see are permanent characteristics, some change depending on the letter or the case that the letter is used in. And the next tip is to listen to good recitation. So listening to good reciters will help us to learn the rules as well as learning how they're applied. So if you imitate the timing and the tune, you'll be able to kind of perfect and polish the way that you recite. I've seen many people many people in our circle would start to implement the med rules. They would implement the different rules of nun and ghunna, and I'm very happy that everyone has been able to start kind of identifying them and trying to apply these. And one way to learn to apply them better is to see how these reciters apply these rules, because a lot of time, myself included, we might try and recite fast, but then we'd end up not giving these different rules their due in our recitations. So some good reciters to listen to, specifically to make your recitation better. One of the best is Mahmoud Khalil al-Husari. He is his recitation is a bit slower, which makes it perfect for people who are starting out and who want to learn to implement these properly. You'll be able to listen to how he applies these rules perfectly, without getting distracted by kind of the speed or some of the inflections or tones that people might change in their recitation. Another good reciter is Muhammad Siddiq al-Minshawi, as well as Mishai Rashid al-Afasi. All of them are good reciters. They all implement the rules very well. Although I definitely recommend starting out with listening to Husari's recitations. And another good thing to do is when you're listening is to try and correct the reciters. Um, these reciters, as well as many of the other ones who you might see on your apps, they're very good reciters. They're not going to be making mistakes. But if you're looking out for these rules and trying to correct them, you'll it's a good way for you to remember them in your head. And honestly, those are the main things I want to recommend for those of you trying to continue reciting after Ramadan. And with that, I think we can start reciting from Surah Al-Mulk. Say, do you have is there anything that you would like to mention that I may have gone over?
No, just not going on. It's good.
Sure. So, inshallah, we can start with Taha. Would you like to begin?
So it's Surah Mulk, right?
Yes.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور الذي خلق 7 سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فطور.
Ahsan. Thank you, Taha. Zain, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين وأعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير وللذين كفروا بربهم عذاب جهنم وبئس المصير.
Ahsan. Thank you, Zain. And Muhammad Ibrahim, please go ahead.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمص- بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين وأعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير وللذين كفروا بربهم عذاب جهنم وبئس المصير إذا ألقوا فيها سمعوا لها شهيقا وهي تفور.
Ahsan. Thank you, Muhammad. Ali, please go ahead.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بصرك مرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير ولقد زينا السماء
Wait,
الدنيا.
sorry, Ali. So we're on ayah 8 now.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry. That's the wrong place. تكاد السماء تميز من الغيظ كلما ألقي فوج سألهم خوات قالوا بلى قد جاءتنا
Ahsant. Thank you, Ali. Amin, please go ahead.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقالوا لو كنا نسمع أو نعقل ما كنا في أصحاب السعير فاعترفوا بذنبهم فسحقا لأصحاب السعير إن الذين يخشون ربهم بالغيب لهم مغفرة وأجر كبير.
Ahsant. Thank you. And Sister Masuma, please go ahead.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وأسروا قولكم أو اجهروا به إنه عليم بذات الصدور ألا يعلم من خلق وهو اللطيف الخبير هو الذي جعل لكم الأرض ذلولا فامشوا في مناكبها وكلوا من رزقه وإليه النشور.
Ahsant. Thank you. And Musa, please go ahead.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أأمنتم من في السماء أن يخسف بكم الأرض فإذا هي تمور أم أمنتم من في السماء أن يرسل عليكم حاصبا فستعلمون كيف نذير ولقد كذب الذين من قبلهم فكيف كان نكير أولم يروا إلى الطير فوقهم صافات ويقبض ما يمسكهن إلا الرحمن إنه بكل شيء بصير.
Ahsant. Thank you, Musa. And Sister Sarah, please go ahead.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أمن هذا الذي هو جند لكم ينصركم من دون الرحيم
من دون الرحمن.
من دون الرحمن إن الكافرون إلا في غرور أمن هذا الذي يرزقكم إن أمسك رزقه بل لجوا في عتو ونفور.
Ahsant. Thank you very much. And Mortaza, please go ahead.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الذي أنشأكم وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة قليلا ما تشكرون قل هو الذي ذرأكم في الأرض وإليه تحشرون ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين قل إنما العلم عند الله وإنما أنا نذير مبين.
Ahsant. Thank you, Mortaza. And Mustafa, please go ahead.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فلما رآه زلفت سيئت وجوه الذين كفروا وقيل هذا الذي كنتم به تدعون قل أرأيتم إن أهلكني الله ومن معي أو رحمنا فمن يجير الكافرين من عذاب أليم.
Ahsan. Thank you, Mustafa. I see there's a Hassan Raza here. Are you, would you like to recite?
Maybe the next reciter can do from Surah Naba or one of the surahs from the 30th juz. So we included the 30th juz as well.
Sure.
I could read again.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Are we doing Surah Naba?
Yes, that would be great.
Page 582.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم عما يتساءلون عن النبأ العظيم الذي هم فيه مختلفون كلا سيعلمون ثم كلا سيعلمون ألم نجعل الأرض مهادا والجبال أوتادا وخلقناكم أزواجا وجعلنا نومكم سباتا وجعلنا الليل لباسا وجعلنا
Thank you, sister. And Zain, please go ahead.
وجعلنا النهار معاشا وبنينا فوقكم سبعا شدادا وجعلنا سراجا وهاجا وأنزلنا من المعصرات ماء ثجاجا لنخرج به حبا ونباتا وجنات ألفافا إن يوم الفصل.
Thank you, Zain. And Musa, please go ahead.
إن يوم الفصل كان ميقاتا يوم ينفخ في الصور فتأتون أفواجا وفتحت السماء فكانت أبوابا وسيرت الجبال فكانت سرابا إن جهنم كانت مرصادا للطاغين مآبا لابثين فيها أحقابا لا
Thank you, Musa. Very good. And then it looks like, Sister Sarah, please go ahead.
Which ayah are you?
We are on ayah 24. لا يذوقون فيها.
Okay. لا يذوقون فيها بردا ولا شرابا إلا حميما وغساقا جزاء وفاقا إنهم كانوا لا يرجون حسابا وكذبوا بآياتنا كذابا وكل شيء أحصيناه كتابا فذوقوا فلن نزيدكم إلا عذابا.
Asante. Thank you, sister.
All right, I think we can conclude there. And all of you who stayed with us for a month, we did a part of every juz of the Quran. And may Allah keep us with the Quran in reading it and thinking about it and learning from it and in practicing it. And with Ahlul Bayt, who are the the lived Quran. So Jazakumullah to all of you, and particularly to Brother Iman for your Tajweed lessons, and for all of you who recited. And inshallah, we hope to see you, again during in person and during online events. And for all of you who are able to make it, we hope to see you tomorrow for Eid, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.